Alright, this is Joyce's speech number 3, and I'm here. Here's her audience, besides me.
Have you ever heard the game of cribbage referred to as the gentleman's game of cribbage? This does not mean that it's only for gentlemen to play, of course. My mom is probably one of the best cribbage players I've ever met. But it refers to a time when the game was created, was in the times of Shakespeare, the early 1600s, where people would not accuse each other of cheating because they were too gentlemanly to do such a thing. And so it's just a game that has a lot of manners, a lot of ritual, and it's very full of rich history. So I'd like to take this opportunity to explain to you about the game of cribbage and where it came from and a little bit of about how to play it. I've been playing cribbage since I was 7. My mom taught me how to play one day when I stayed home from school sick, and I think she just wanted to have a cribbage partner. But I've enjoyed it ever since, and it's a game that I would always like to have another partner to play, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to teach you guys how to play. Cribbage was founded by the English poet Sir John Suckling in the early 1600s, and he had a very short life, but it was one known of being a card player and gambler, and of course he created the game of cribbage for us. He died a very tragic death because he was caught being involved in a plot to escape an earl from the Tower of London, and so he was not quite sure if he was poisoned by himself or by one of his servants. But at least we got cribbage out of the deal. So in order to play a game of cribbage, you need 3 components. First, you need a cribbage board with pegs, and then you need a deck of cards and an opponent. The standard cribbage board is made of wood and has 2 to 3 tracks of 121 holes. This is a 2-player board. The one shown here is for 3. You can play 2 or 3 players. This is a standard board, but you can also get them in different shapes and varieties just for a little bit of fun. The 29 refers to a perfect hand in cribbage, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. There are 3 phases to playing the game of cribbage. The first phase is dealing and discarding. So the dealer is going to deal 6 cards per person, and then each person discards 2 cards to the dealer's crib, which is of course where the term crib comes from. So I've just got 6 cards, and you pick 2 that aren't going to give you points. I'll explain point system in a little bit. And you put them in the dealer's crib. It's an extra hand for them to play at the end of the game. And then the non-dealer cuts the deck, whoops, and if the dealer takes the next card out, if it's a jack, they automatically get it. Phase 2 of the game of cribbage deals with, it's called the counting phase, and the non-dealer will pick a card from their hand and will count. So if they pick this one, they'll put 8, and then it alternates back and forth between the dealer and the non-dealer, and they'll pick another card and it'll be like 14, and you go up to 31 and then start over again. Along the way you get points for making exactly 15 or exactly 31, or if there's pairs or runs played. And then the last phase is counting your hand, is otherwise known as the show. So the non-dealer gets to count the points in their hand first, and they count you make points with 15s and pairs and runs and flushes and the right jack. So if I had a jack in my hand that was the same suit as the starter card, you would get a point for that. So this hand, for example, has 15, here's a 15, and then here's a 15, because you get to use the count starter card for points. And then you just count it out, and then you just move your peg points, how many points you go, and then the dealer counts theirs. Then they count their crib as well. And then the non-dealer always counts first, and that comes into play at the end when if it's a really close game, you might have to know who goes first because only one person can win. There's no such thing as a tie in cribbage. Certain hands are unique and rare in this game. The 29 is the perfect hand. It's the most points that anybody can get with any 5 cards. And this is an example of it right here. You're going to have 3 5s in your hand and a jack, and the jack has to match the suit of the starter card, which is also a 5. The chances of getting this hand is 216, 580 to 1. Probably not going to get it very often, maybe once in a lifetime. So, and I won't go through all the details of how it counts up to 29, but there's basically 8 sets of 15, which is 16 points, 6 sets of pairs, which is 12 points, and then the right jack for 29. Another hand is referred to as the 19 hand. It is a joke, really, because you don't get 19 points, you get 0. And it's called this because of all the combinations of points that you can get, you will never get 19. So the odds of getting this hand are actually 7 to 1, unfortunately. So this is just an example of a card configuration that will give you 0 points. There are some unique terms in cribbage, and you may or may not hear them anymore because it's kind of old-fashioned. There's the 1 for his knob and 2 for his heels. That refers to the jack, the right jack. So if the card pulled out on the starter deck is a jack, that's 2 for his heels. If you have the 1 in your hand, it's 1 for his knob. Another term is muggins. It's a way of playing the game where if your opponent misses points, you can steal them. You just say, oh, you missed a pair, and then you take the 2 points. But if I don't like playing this game that way because I figure if it's a gentleman's game, you're going to let your opponent, just point them out, oh, you missed 2 points, and let them take the points. That's how I prefer to play. And then finally we have skunk, which is if you beat your opponent by 30 points or more. There's a skunk here on the board. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a skunk mark there. That will get you, if you beat your opponent by 30 points or more in tournament play, that counts for 2 games. So, and then there's also the one way back here, which is a double skunk, or I think they call it a lurch. And that's worth 3. Okay, so I know that there's a lot of unique and interesting terminology, and it can seem confusing. But I think that if you take the time to learn how to play cribbage, you will find it rewarding, challenging, and fun.
I'm still here. And here's the audience.